Good morning, everybody. This is Addison Schonland and Richard Sherman. We are from AirInsight, and our guest today is Arjan Meijer, who is President and CEO of Embraer Commercial Aviation. Arjan, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Addison, thank you very much for having me. The honor is all mine.
You're too kind. So we have some things that we want to talk to you about, and I guess we should just start off right away with saying, could you give us an update on the situation at Embraer Commercial Aviation? Where are we as we try and get through this crazy time?
Yes, of course. I'm sure you're referring to the tough year we have behind us. There's a lot of things that are happening at Embraer. But Embraer Commercial Aviation is, as of a few months, an integral part again of the Embraer organization. So we did a carve out at the start of the year to prepare for the deal with Boeing. That of course Boeing stopped the engagement on the deal in April, and after that in June I took my new role, and we decided to reintegrate Embraer Commercial into Embraer. That's where we are today. So Embraer Commercial Aviation is no longer for sale, and we're now looking forward to a completely new market. Hopefully post-COVID soon, when we get out of this crisis.
The outlook that you recently published is 10 years as opposed to 20. Does that reflect the fact that even 10 months nowadays is a long-term forecast?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's exactly the reason. That's why we picked 10 years. We believe normally part of the future we predict at looking at the past. But that's extremely hard at the moment. It's very difficult for anyone in the industry to predict how we get out of this. We do see some developments already, but we've said let's first focus on the 10 years as a good start. That's far away enough. The first 5 years we see as a period of recovery, and then we've taken a period of growth. So that's where the 10 years came from, whereas in the past, we always looked at 20 years.
Richard?
One topic I'd like to discuss is the Turboprop, the E3, as it's called, probably by you or others. You and your Vice President Marketing, Rodrigo Silva e Souza, have already disclosed some details. You want to do a bigger turboprop, up to 100 seats, new technology. Looking at your latest market outlook presented last week, you forecast a market of some 1,080 turboprops for the next 10 years. Why is it essential for Embraer to return to the turboprop market?
Well, of course, our focus as Embraer is on the below 150 seat segment. We have spent since 2004 on the E-Jets and the E2. We believe with the E2 we've brought the most efficient and most sustainable aircraft to the markets that we possibly can at the moment. So we feel with that product we are very well equipped for the years ahead to serve the market with an excellent product for the up to 150 seat segment, sort of above 80 with jets. Where we don't serve the market is on the smaller gauge, smaller segment. We believe we have the capability to build a better turboprop than anything out there at the moment. We believe that sits comfortably within our comfort zone below 150 seats. And we feel that market segment is really up for improvements. We believe we can not only bring a more efficient aircraft to the market, but also a more quiet airplane, a more economical airplane, a much better airplane from a passenger appreciation. So we believe we have a lot of good things in our portfolio that we could bring to market in the turboprop. We've been looking at that for a long time now. At the start of this year, remember, Richard, when we were in Dublin, we discussed no JV, no JP. That was mostly funding related. So we're very clear at the moment that we are still interested to go into the TP market. We don't dub it the E3, by the way. We did use that term in the past. We used different terms, but it is a turboprop. It is a 70 to 100 seat segment where we still have to decide on the exact size. We still have to launch the program. So it's still very early on. But the reason why we are talking a lot about it a lot is because we have put the partnerships as one of our strategies going forward, and we are looking for partners to do the turboprop with us.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we're very vocal about the product. Of course, we believe in it, but it's still very early days. The program has not been launched yet, but if we can get the funding in place and we can get good partners to do that with us, we are very interested to bring that product to the market.
How much time do you need before launch?
In all fairness, we're flexible there, but I think roughly 2021 hopefully is the year for the partnership, and then after 21 to launch the program. That's what I would say in rough terms, without going into too much detail.
And is a partner in China the most logical one, or do you see other options elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, Richard. I get a lot of questions. Who's the most likely partner? We will certainly share that with the market when we get closer. All I can say now is that all the options are open. We're looking at different options at the moment.
Yeah. But launching probably in the next couple of years, you aim for an entry into service in 2027, if I'm correct?
That's correct. Yes.
That's quite close to where you see your competitors and other airframers try to introduce new technology, the hybrid technology. Don't you run the risk of developing a new turboprop that might be outdated in, let's say, 5-6 years after that, because hybrid technology has entered the market?
We don't believe so, because if we would believe that, we would not be seriously talking about a turboprop. We believe that the breakthroughs will come in our segment. We are, as Embraer, we're doing a lot of efforts in the emission side on technologies. Of course, Embraer builds aircraft. We use existing technologies, but we're very active in and following the market where that is heading. We're a strong believer in hybrid electric. We know there is OEMs talking about different technologies, about hydrogen. For us, that's one of the many other opportunities that's out there. It's a technology which is very early days. We believe that a lot needs to be done to bring that to the market, and we'll have to see how that develops. But where we focus on at the moment is hybrid electric, and we're focusing very active. We have, as you know, we have the eVTOL aircraft that we're working on with Embraer X, which is a 4-person urban air vehicle that we're working on. We are working on a 1-seater aircraft, which is our crop duster aircraft that we have, which will fly next year. We have an active project on the defense side that we have been communicating about, which is a small transport aircraft, hybrid electric. So we're very active on different stages. As we are very active, by the way, on alternate fuels. We were the first OEM to certify the use of alternate fuels in early 2000s. So I think Embraer has been extremely busy in these new technologies. We have always brought the most efficient and most sustainable aircraft to the market. By the way, we have improved the fuel burn on the E-Jet since 2000 versus the condition we had in the market at that time. We brought a like 30% fuel burn reduction. So we're doing what we can, but from a turboprop perspective, to your question, we believe for this technology to be mature to power such a big aircraft, which more range, is going to take quite some years to develop. So we don't believe in 27 we are close to that yet. But of course, we are looking at alternatives on that turboprop for the future. So it could be an alternative it could be a platform, if you will, for a future application of a different technology than the current turboprop.
But with Embraer being determined to launch a new turboprop, could we see a revival of the turboprop? As I expect, ATR and Airbus will be looking at new concepts as well, and maybe other players as well.
You mean on that turboprop?
On the turboprop, the market itself.
Sorry, I have to.
Are you the only one doing the reinvention of the turboprop, as to say, or do you expect more competitors to come into the market?
I think for now we're the only one explicitly talking about it.
Addison?
Thank you. Arjan, up to now, the E175 has been the most crucial model that Embraer produces. Obviously, we have a problem here with the scope clause in the United States, which closes off the E175. How long do you think you're going to continue building E175s then?
Well, it's a good question, Addison. We've been very clear to our customers that we will build E1s as long as there's demand. I know you're very familiar with our production site in Brazil. We actually build the E1 and the E2 on the same manufacturing line. So we are quite flexible to keep building that aircraft. The E1-175 has been a great airplane for Embraer over the last several years, if you will. To your point, especially for the US market, we sold an incredible amount of 175 E1s, but also to other places in lower numbers in the rest of the world. Yes, the 175 E2 currently does not fall within the scope clause. We've been talking about that a lot. We will have to see how that develops, but let's not forget that the 175 E1 is a great aircraft. Our customers in the US are extremely happy with that aircraft. So we're committed to that plane as long as we need to. And in parallel, we are focused on the 175 E2 as a part of the E2 family. Even if the scope clause in the US does not open up, we do believe that it's an integral part of the family. It's an 80-seat variant with full commonality with the rest of the E2 family. So there are several operators outside the US and even inside North America, if you will, there's operators that are not bound by scope clauses that could actually take a 175 E2. So we believe they're completely separate discussions. We are committed to the 175 E2. We're in the middle of the flight campaign to get that aircraft certified. We have given a date to the market, end of 2023. Whether the scope clause changes or not. And we do have active discussions with airlines about the 175 E2 outside the US. So we believe there is a good market for the 175 E2, and we have a great airplane for the US market.
Arjan, can you tell us how much Embraer has spent on developing the E2-175?
No, I cannot actually.
Okay. All right, because it obviously that given the constraints of the new Embraer,
yeah,
and it's really a perfect storm when one looks at the travel market. When we look at analysis, and I know you Embraer has also produced your own analysis of the market. That airplane is the right size for recovering travel, air travel. It's the kind of size of airplane that you can sell a viable load factor in the current environment. And it's interesting to see, for example, in the United States, the airlines that are flying the airplane here, by far, most of their flight activity is with E175s in the US domestic market. So you would have thought that there would be great anxiety to ensure that they have that right size, to use the language from Embraer, to use that right sizing equipment. And it must be quite frustrating to watch the even better E2-175 be constrained and hobbled by this scope clause.
Well, I'm not so sure, Addison. I think you're absolutely right about the perfect storm. And I think Embraer is with the product line that we have available with the E2 and the E1, if you will. We have a great set of instruments for airlines to work with post-COVID. To your point, the E-jets are taking the lead in the recovery. We see that in the US, we see that in Europe, we see that in South Africa. I know you saw your interview with Roger Foster, who's flying a lot of our aircraft. You know, the E-jets are clocking a lot of hours and a lot more than for example, narrow bodies. We see an increased demand in used E-jets at the moment around the world. Customers we've been talking to for years who are now actually taking the bold move into the segment. In the US, there's a huge demand for 175 E1s operationally. You see them flying a lot of hours as well. And the 175 E1 is perfectly equipped to do that. The 175 E2 will come to the market end of 23. We're currently still in 22. Let's not forget that. So I think the market needs this segment in the next couple of years to get out of the crisis. And I think the 175 E1 is a great aircraft to do it. The 190 E2 is a great aircraft to do it. They're all way below the narrow body aircraft. The 195 E2 is able to fly at a trip cost of roughly 25% less than the bigger narrow bodies at roughly similar seat costs. So I think to that point, the instruments are there, and I think Embraer is in a good place to help the airlines out of the crisis.
Yeah.
Richard?
If I may ask about your backlog, then you have only 151 E2s in the backlog and 156 E1s. Mm-hmm. Are they confirmed, or do you expect any cancellations, or have you had any cancellations in the last couple of months?
Richard, no, we have not had any cancellations. We had some deferrals. We have more than 300 aircraft, to your point, in backlog. We have built around 90 aircraft per year for the last number of years, so you can easily do the math. Don't compare our backlog to those of the manufacturers that build 40, 50 aircraft per month, right? So I think it's a decent backlog, but I think on the E2 we're working hard to increase the backlog. Let's not forget that we brought the E2 to the market quite early in the life of the E-jets. So I think over the next period, we will see more operators starting to look at replacement of the E-jets. We believe the situation that Embraer found itself in over the last couple of years created a lot of uncertainty in the market. I'm strongly convinced that hasn't necessarily helped the situation either. I'm very bullish going forward. I think although we're still in a terrible situation with COVID, and we do see now the lights coming of the vaccine. This morning we saw the first person get vaccinated in the UK. We saw the first vaccine being approved in the US today. We believe if the market, or rather say when the market finds its way back out of the crisis, we think the E2 is very well positioned to help airlines do just that. And I'm pretty confident that we have a strong product going forward.
And you are confident about your options as well, 401 aircraft as options. Will they be converted into firm orders?
Our option aircraft. Well, you can personally reach out to any customer operating the E2. I think they'll all tell you that they're extremely happy with the airplane. Economically, it's a very powerful asset. Reliability-wise, we're exceeding our targets that we promised to the market. Obviously, airlines today are somewhat reluctant to expand their order book for obvious reasons. But we're hopeful that airlines like the E2 and will firm up those options in the future.
Alison?
Thank you. There are interesting opportunities now. You just mentioned Roger, the conversation I had with Roger Foster a week ago, I think it's a week ago. There are interesting opportunities. You'd mentioned, Arjan, about the pre-owned market of E1s. For example, Alliance in Australia,
yeah,
which is an interesting opportunity there to replace some Fokker 100s. But of course, the conversation I had with Airlink in South Africa, there's a unique situation. The national carrier has gone out of business, and private airlines now are able to capitalize as quickly as possible as they can. You obviously have several airlines. I mean, take, for example, KLM, big brand airline that would be replacing its E1s with E2s. But what happens to those E1s and where can you go? Airlink is obviously one opportunity. alliance in Australia is another opportunity. Can you share with us some thinking about the E1 secondary market?
Sure, Edison. We saw a lot of traction in the market over the last couple of months. You mentioned Alliance. We've been very bullish about Bamboo Airways in Vietnam. We have some other airlines that have been communicated over the last couple of months. So we added 5 operators to the family over the last couple of months, and there's another 5 in the mix that I can't name at this point. But there's an active market looking at the used E-jets, and that's good for Embraer. We to your point, we need airlines to embrace the E-jets. From our perspective, whether they operate the E1, used or new, or E2s, it expands the family of the E-jets around the world. The airlines you typically see go into used E-jets are not the airlines that typically would go into new equipment anyway. So that's a process that we support, that we work actively on together with our partners in the industry. And I'm extremely pleased to see some good momentum over the last couple of months on that segment. And that will certainly help trigger more demand for the E-jets going forward, and help airlines that currently operate E-jets transfer to E2s at some point in time.
Arjan, thank you so much for sharing some time with us. We really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Edison.